Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Seventh bill, Senate Bill 739, has to do with, I guess, accuracy in labeling, transparency when it comes to compounded drugs. I'm not sure what the committee's familiarity is with compounding pharmacies, but compounding pharmacies are basically when a patient needs a pharmaceutical product created to sort of meet a unique need of the patient. Sometimes they take a drug that's normally in a pill format and they make it liquid, or they take it from liquid to pill, or they add flavors, or they combine drugs together. But there's some patients that have sort of unique medical needs, and these pharmacies have developed to be able to sort of customize drugs to be able to fit whatever need you have. I don't know if the committee remembers, but in September of 2012, there was a nationwide meningitis outbreak that resulted from a compounding pharmacy in Massachusetts. There were 14,000 people that were exposed to meningitis due to that. People were injected with meningitis in, I think, 23 states. 678 people developed meningitis infections, 44 died. There was 14 people were charged criminally. There was a $200 million settlement as a result of that. The average victim or the average person injected was about 68 years old. And after that, the federal government enacted some regulations to more tightly regulate compounding pharmacies across the country. But when it comes to these drugs, it's important that they be labeled correctly. And what this bill basically requires is that, if you look at it, it basically simply says that a compounded drug, before it's put into a person, has to have the name and strength of the medication, list of the active ingredients and strengths, the outsourcing facility's assigned control number, which corresponds to the compounding record, expiration date, complies with the FDA rules, and the quantity of the drug compounded. And that's just so it's clear what these people are receiving. And just to be clear with the committee about what also prompted me to put this in, aside from this scare in 2012, I'm sure the committee is aware that, or I assume the committee is aware that last year, Commonwealth of Virginia decided to start using compounding drugs in executions instead of using just the straight drugs they had then. Last year we had a bill that came through, I think it was Senator Saslaw's bill, which would have provided that anything about compounding drugs was to be completely secret. That bill got to the floor of the House of Delegates. We had a rather extensive floor debate, and I partnered with Delegate Lemunyon on that, and Delegate Morris, a few others, who were very concerned about government secrecy. And those of us who felt strongly that the government shouldn't do anything in secret, and anything and everything that's done to people should be done out in the open and in public, felt very strongly that there shouldn't be all that much that's secret about the execution process. And the bill died, I want to say, something like a 60-40 vote. It might even been more than that in the House of Delegates. I know that the Tea Party was involved in that discussion, as well as many of the anti-death penalty groups. After that, September of this year, I was highly disturbed to discover that the Department of Corrections had thought it was appropriate to purchase compounded phenobarbital from the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. And I have an AP article here about it. And when Texas was contacted and asked who created this substance, which was used to eventually execute, I think it was Ariel Prieto, they said, we don't have to tell you. And you can read this article, but it basically goes on and on and on about how Texas has been acquiring from somebody, and Texas has secrecy laws which prevent anybody from seeing where they're acquiring these things. And so basically, from my point of view, the Department of Corrections completely circumvented the legislature's will and used, from my point of view, a secret drug to conduct an execution, which I think is highly inappropriate and potentially illegal. But I I think it's very disturbing. The way that a lot of the information that has come out about how the Department of Corrections does what it does and how people are able to understand how they're going to be killed is through pharmacy records. About 3 years ago, we debated a bill, and I believe it's coming again this year, about the electric chair, whether or not making the electric chair ought to be a default method. And in connection with that debate, the Department of Corrections made representations that that they were running short of medications. And it was only after a Freedom of Information Act request to the Department of Corrections pharmacy revealed that they had medications and that they had medications that weren't expired, that the Richmond Times-Dispatch unveiled in the middle of that debate to point out that the Department of Corrections wasn't being fully forthright, that the people were able to understand what the truth and what the facts were, so we would have an accurate floor debate. And so, if we're going to be in the business of using these drugs and injecting them into people, I think it's important that that the people know. It's important that anybody who's having a drug put in them know who made it, what's in it, when it expires, and what the licensed federal facility who created it is. To me, it's just basic information that anybody ought to know before they have a drug put in them. And that's all. That's what the bill does. It's a very short, little, simple bill. Nobody's come to me telling me they're in opposition to it. I haven't heard any complaints about it. I think everybody assumes that every drug has a label on it that says who made it and what's in it and when it expires, and that's basically what it does. But I wanted to make sure the committee understood my full motivation on it before as we move through the process.
So Senator Surovell, I will commend you for rolling the Trojan horse up to the gate and then getting the soldiers out before it went through the gate. I candidly, genuinely admire you because that's not something we see every day here in this building, that level of candor and forthrightness. It strikes me there are two concepts in this bill. One deals with disclosure to users of compounded pharmaceuticals who aren't going to die, and the other deals with the death penalty specifically. Is that an accurate depiction? You're doing two things here. You're helping somebody who might need a compounded pharmaceutical by virtue of their special needs, that they're better delivered for that individual via liquid than tablet, etc. Right? And also attempting to ensure that there's full disclosure of DOC for whatever lethal injection compounds might be used moving forward. Is that fair?
That's fair.
So in the interest of being as candid with you as you've been with us, at least the chair feels that the first one is a laudable goal, and candidly, I'm not terribly concerned because the difference with lethal injection is if the drug works right, you don't get better. Whereas with most drugs, we're trying to help people, not so much. So I would sort of personally seek to bifurcate it, because if you're happy with one end and not both, obviously not as happy, then I think that the future of at least this vote on this subcommittee may hang in the balance. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Jeff Russo on behalf of the Community Council Conference. We have no comment on the broader applicability of the bill. Not really qualified to do that, but I do want to address the death penalty aspect of it specifically. We were very surprised to learn through reading a news account in October that the Department of Corrections got one of the 3 drugs in the execution drug cocktail from Texas. And again, as Senator Surovell pointed out, the interesting thing about that is number one, Texas got it from a compounding pharmacy, and number 2, Texas has secrecy laws. And both of those concepts were rejected by the General Assembly during the 2015 legislative session. So we feel, as Senator Surovell does, that this was an end run around the General Assembly process here. And furthermore, we think the public does have a right to know where these drugs are coming from and how they're made, what materials are being used, et cetera. All the same arguments that we made last year, and we think that whether one is for or against the death penalty, that full disclosure is very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else opposed? I'm sorry, anyone else support? I'm not trying to confuse you.
Just Virginia populates from Virginians for alternatives to the death penalty, and we are in agreement with everything that Dr. Secrecy said from the Virginia Catholic Conference. We wholeheartedly support the bill.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Caroline here. I actually have no position on this bill. I'm with the Department of Health Professions, the Executive Director of the Board of Pharmacy. Our issues would be to the technical nature of the bill. We believe that this labeling requirement issue is already addressed by the law that was passed last year, addressing in-state and non-resident outsourcing facilities. Additionally, there's a technical concern with respect to the beyond use date requirement in the proposed language, requiring compliance with the USP&F standards for setting that beyond use date. Yet federal law would require, as well as state law, requires outsourcing facilities to comply with current good manufacturing practices, which is actually a higher standard than USPSN standard.
So let me ask you this, Caroline. Would this bill, as it's structured, be benign and redundant to previous law, or would it actually be
problematic,
counterproductive and problematic? Okay. Anybody, what have I done? Support or opposed? 8 to 15? I've lost it. Anybody opposed to the bill in its current form? Sir? You gotta speak. You can't just squeeze out. The price tag. Anyone else? I'll tell you what, this I think may end up being a vote really on where people stand on the death penalty, which is unfortunate because it looks to me like you've done good work. I was inclined personally again to be supportive of the front end of the concept. Caroline from DHP did not do you any favors to that end because I think her wording was that would be counterproductive, problematic. Thank you. I really do, guys. Yes, Dr. Dunn. Senator, I actually hold doctor on a higher plateau.
Caroline and I worked a little bit on this legislation last year with the Board of Pharmacy when I was on the Board of Medicine. There are incredibly complex issues with how this is done because there are so many federal regulations with which the state has to align. So I would really encourage everybody to defer to the Board of Pharmacy on this and let them manage how these things are labeled and dealt with because it is an incredibly complex set of variables.
Senator Surovell.
I've been working on this bill for 2 or 3 months, and my recollection was that the Board of Pharmacy had already seen it and signed off on it, and so I'm a little confused as to why I'm hearing now there's issues with it, and if there are wording changes that they think could be used to deal with that, it sounds to me like it could be very easily fixed, and so I don't know whether it would take 10 minutes or 24 hours, but I'm happy to do that if that were to sustain the vibrancy of the legislation.
Tom, we're not scheduled to sit again, are we? I'll tell you what, Senator Surovell.
Bring it to full committee.
Well, it's coming to full committee either way because this is not the House of Delegates and we don't kill stuff in session. Every once in a while I like to feel like we're better than this, guys. Senator Surovell, Caroline, is it something you'd be willing to talk to, or are we, and let me be clear, by talk to, I mean like in 5 or 10 minutes.
Sure.
Okay. We'll pass this by for the time and see if there's something we can do. Again, I'm going to tell you, in the interest of full disclosure, on the back side of this, if we're going to inject into a human being something that's design purpose is to end their life, which is it's a whole nother, I don't care what's in it. And so but your front end concern, if it's something that y'all can address, by all means do. And you know what, I'm but one of 6 people in the sub. I'm just telling you up front, I'm sympathetic on the front end of the bill, and then on the second of the bifurcated 2-part, it bothers me that the state's in the business of taking people's lives anyway. But take some time and
well, I'll just point out to Mr. Chairman that, the debate in the House last year had nothing to do with whether you were for or against the death penalty. It had to do with whether you were for or against government secrecy. And the reason there were 60 people voting against it was because there were 60 members of the legislature that did not like the government killing people with secret drugs. And that was what that debate was all about, and that's what this is in part designed to fix. Not about whether you're for or against the death penalty, just about whether or not you're for sunshine and transparency.
I'm for transparency, but I don't think the entire world should have been able to read the Secretary of State's emails. So, anyway.
Okay, we're next.
Senator Marston.